The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps.
But I think that. But I can't get past the core fact about Walz, which is he presided over, allowed the biggest city in the state to get burned down.
And seemed to not only allow it, but kind of...
He liked it.
Support it, you know?
Did you see the video of his wife saying, I kept the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber from the riots?
I did not see that.
Wow. The wife whose hand he shook.
Oh my God. By the way, I mean, I know it's picking on a little thing, but who the hell shakes their wife?
What does it really suggest when a man greets the woman he's been married to for 3 decades with a rigid, business-like handshake, right there on a public stage? When Minnesota Governor Tim Walz did exactly that, the moment spread online fast and struck many people as more than simple awkwardness. To a lot of viewers, it felt like a small moment that exposed something deeper out on the surface. Walz leans hard into the image of Minnesota nice, almost as if it defines who he is. His political persona is built around being careful, calm, and so polite that he rarely pushes back on anyone. He presents himself as steady and reassuring, projecting a quiet, almost sleepy confidence meant to feel safe and familiar. But when commentators like Greg Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson began to examine that image more closely, cracks started to show. What emerged wasn't the picture of a firm leader fully in charge. Instead, many saw someone overseeing ongoing problems while continuing to wear the same rehearsed smile for the cameras. That brief handshake no longer looked like a harmless misstep. To critics, it felt like an unintentional reveal, pointing to a noticeable gap between the polished public image and the person beneath it. In an era when politicians go out of their way to appear warm and affectionate with their spouses, Walz came across as distant. The stiff, official gesture felt less like a personal quirk and more like a moment when the performance briefly slipped. For many watching, it raised questions that a simple smile could no longer answer.
Politico lingers on candidates' fingers and defend Walz's wide eyes as they claim beards are for bad guys. Tyler, speaking of beards, and I mean the one on your face, not the one that you hang out with.
Let me just say that Walz and every other governor who did anything like that is a monster, and I think on some level he will be punished for it. But no, I admire what you did enough that I hope I'd be man enough to do it myself. I took minor risks during COVID by pointing out things that seemed true to me, but I didn't do anything that heroic. I think it's absolutely essential. Clearly, we're moving toward an authoritarian state. I think we've already arrived. I think your life is a testament to that.
Wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up. That's like Bud Light saying, hey, you know what? We could use more Dylan Mulvaney.
That carefully crafted, friendly image didn't just weaken in 2020. It seemed to fall apart entirely when Minneapolis descended into chaos during the unrest. For Governor Tim Walz, this was a defining moment that demanded firm leadership and quick decisions. Instead, to many observers, it became a turning point that exposed serious weaknesses in his approach. Expectations were high, but confidence in his leadership dropped fast. For days, the city appeared out of control. A major police station was left behind as crowds moved through the area, and large sections of the city were left badly damaged. The scenes shared on television and social media felt shocking and hard to believe. Yet Walz's response struck many people as distant and slow, lacking the urgency the situation clearly demanded. That delay became a major point of criticism. Commentator Greg Gutfeld went even further, arguing this wasn't just poor management. He suggested Walz didn't merely stand by, but may have quietly accepted what was happening. According to that view, the governor treated the disorder not as a serious crisis, but as something he was unwilling to confront directly. It's a heavy claim, and one that reshaped how critics viewed his leadership during that period. That perception deepened after a video circulated involving Walz's wife, Gwen, who reportedly said she kept her windows open to take in the smell from the unrest. whether meant as an offhand remark or something more serious. The comment left a lasting impression. To many, it showed a disconnect between leaders living comfortably and residents facing fear and uncertainty in the city. The consequences didn't stop when calm finally returned. In the months that followed, Minneapolis reportedly saw a large portion of its police force leave, with officers saying they felt unsupported by those in charge. For critics, this wasn't just about one period of unrest. It marked the start of public safety unraveling under leadership that, in their view, prioritized political image over the immediate needs of everyday people.
So Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Who is Tim Walz exactly?
It started sort of with picking up on just these little lies he would tell. He never was a command sergeant major, despite the fact him, saying that he was. He never attained this rank in the military. Instead, he abandoned his troops and they were deployed to Iraq without him, and he ran for Congress. So I've always felt as a reporter, if someone lies about little things, they're lying about big things.
That's a principle that stands the test of time.
And Minnesota has become, the home of this defund the police movement. It was on the ballot. Minneapolis did not vote to defund the police, but I would say in every way, shape, or form, they defunded the police. You have the Minneapolis Police Department that's lost about 40% of their cops since George Floyd. But instead of being
Minneapolis lost 40% of its cops in 5 years?
Nearly half.
While Minneapolis was still dealing with damage and tension, many people felt another problem was starting at the same time. This one hit the state's economy during Governor Tim Walz's handling of the pandemic. Life suddenly became very hard for ordinary people, and the rules felt strict and unforgiving. Critics said Walz didn't act like a calm leader trying to help everyone, but more like someone using power without much sympathy. Some commentators, including Greg Gutfeld, said his leadership felt harsh and intimidating. Small businesses were ordered to shut down quickly, with no room for discussion or understanding. One story that upset many people involved an elderly woman who reopened her small shop peacefully and ended up facing serious punishment. To supporters, it felt wrong that someone trying to survive was treated so severely. What angered people even more was the clear imbalance. Small family businesses were forced to close, but big retail chains stayed open without problems. Many couldn't understand how small shops were considered dangerous, while huge stores were somehow safe. To everyday workers, the rules didn't make sense and felt unfair. The same frustration showed up with churches being closed while liquor stores were allowed to operate. Critics called this a shocking double standard. To them, these decisions didn't seem based purely on health concerns. Instead, they felt political and selective. Tucker Carlson described the situation as a form of tight control, where people were constantly told what to fear, how to behave, and when they were allowed to live normally. From this point of view, it seemed less about keeping people safe and more about controlling them. Many felt they were being treated like children rather than responsible adults, while their livelihoods were being destroyed in the process.
So I'm the law-abiding grandma that was sentenced to 90 days in jail for opening my business during the shutdowns as a peaceful protest when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz unconstitutionally and illegally shut our businesses down. So my question is, if you were in my situation, would you have done the same thing, or what would you have done?
Well, I flatter myself by imagining I would have done the same thing, because I think what you did is honorable and necessary.
Dude, you're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us.
But the doubts about Tim Walz don't stop with his time as governor. Critics say the questions go back much further, all the way to how his public image was first built. They argue there's an early story that helped boost his career, but one that doesn't fully match the facts. To them, this wasn't a small misunderstanding, but something important that shaped how people saw him. For years, Walz was often introduced as a command sergeant major, a very high and respected rank in the military. That title sounds serious and carries a lot of respect. It gives the impression of strong leadership and long-earned trust. Over time, it became a big part of how he was presented to voters, someone who knew discipline and service firsthand. Critics say the problem is that the details don't line up. Walz did serve 24 years in the National Guard, but some reports and records raise questions about whether he officially reached that rank. In their view, it wasn't framed as a guess or an error. It was stated clearly and repeated often, which is why they see it as misleading. There are also questions about the timing of his political run. Critics point out that he left his unit to run for Congress just before it was set to deploy to Iraq. To them, that move looked like choosing personal ambition over staying with his fellow soldiers during a tough moment, as Tucker Carlson put it. This wasn't just about stretching a resume. It raised a bigger issue about trust. The concern is simple. If someone bends the truth about their own background, why should people believe them on bigger matters? In this version of the story, the rank claim wasn't just one mistake, but a sign of a deeper problem with honesty.
5 years ago this summer, George Floyd, a convicted felon, OD'd on fentanyl outside a convenience store in Minneapolis, and the country changed forever. 5 years later, Tim Walz is still the governor. Keith Ellison is still the attorney general. The cops who were falsely convicted of murdering George Floyd are mostly still in prison. But what happened in Minneapolis itself? Well, it's been wrecked. And no one has said a word about it. But I just wonder about this story in particular. Did he have contact with Walz? Do we know that Walz ever, has Walz said, I met this guy ever?
Well, this is what's interesting. We know that he served on a board appointed by Walz. However, I'll say that...
what kind of board was it?
It was a workforce development board.
Critics say the effects of Tim Walz's leadership showed up most in the school system. While his administration focused heavily on fairness and inclusion, they argue education suffered. Test scores in reading and math reportedly dropped, and many felt learning took a backseat to social ideas and feelings. Greg Gutfeld joked that under Walz, even simple math had no clear answer. The joke landed because critics believe schools stopped pushing students to meet high standards. Instead of encouraging achievement, they say expectations were lowered and students paid the price. Some argue this wasn't an accident. They believe the goal shifted from helping students succeed to making sure no one felt uncomfortable failing. In that view, protecting feelings became more important than real progress. Critics also point to a personal decision they find odd. They claim Walz and his wife chose a wedding date linked to a major historical protest in China. Out of all possible dates, that choice raised questions for some. They also note that the couple reportedly spent their honeymoon in China. To critics, the timing and destination felt poorly judged and added to their concerns about decision-making.
Are people misreading Tim's odd greeting? The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it.
His wedding anniversary, they were married 5 years after Tiananmen Square, and he picked that date because it was a date that they would remember, he and his wife.
What?
Who does that?
Tiananmen Square?
Correct.
The tank crushing the lone protester? That's
their wedding anniversary. And they went to China for their honeymoon.
Come on. You're sure he picked the anniversary?
They've talked about this
in Tiananmen Square
interviews. Yeah, this is in newspapers.
But Tiananmen Square was a massacre of peaceful protesters.
I know.
Do you think they picked it to in the memory of those brave souls who died opposing the machine?
They haven't said that.
This slow-moving disaster of a governorship quickly became a favorite target for two very different commentators. Greg Gutfeld brought humor, while Tucker Carlson took a sharp, serious look at the record. Gutfeld went for comedy, using quick jokes and biting sarcasm to show just how strange things looked. He didn't just criticize Walz. He seemed to enjoy pointing out the awkward moments. He highlighted Walz's clumsy attempts to connect with voters like the time he called himself a huge disappointment as an older white man. Gutfeld joked that it was the first thing Walz had gotten completely right. His jokes landed hard, too, like comparing Walz's woke posturing to telling Joy Behar she wasn't eating enough Doritos. Then Carlson stepped in with a calm, methodical approach. He didn't need to shout to make his points hit. Carefully, he went through Walz's record, piece by piece. Carlson didn't paint him as some villain. Instead, he showed a different kind of risk. An ordinary bureaucrat quietly enforcing policies that hurt people, all while appearing friendly and competent. At end Carlson's telling, Walz comes across as the perfect example of soft authoritarianism, a smiling official who follows elite guidance, signs orders, and makes life harder for the very citizens he says he wants to protect.
One of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry.
That was
Beyond the social issues, critics say Tim Walz's leadership put Minnesota's economy in serious trouble. They argue his policies made the state feel unfriendly to growth. Taxes went up, rules piled on, and businesses felt punished, often leaving as soon as they could. To critics, his push for a green energy agenda says a lot about his style. Lots of ideas, little stability. They say Walz backed expensive, unreliable energy projects that strained the power grid, while he seemed quick to give in to teachers' unions. He talked constantly about sustainability, but in practice, critics say his approach wasn't sustainable at all. To them, it looked like chasing a progressive ideal while ordinary Minnesotans were left dealing with higher costs and a less reliable system. When problems appeared, critics claim he often blamed others instead of taking responsibility. By the end, this critique of Walz is more than just political commentary. It's framed as a clear example of modern leadership gone wrong. Greg Gutfeld delivered the comedy. Carlson went through the record methodically, and Walz, intentionally or not, provided plenty of material. In this view, he represents a new kind of leader, one who hides missteps behind a friendly smile and wraps policies that hurt people in the language of compassion and science. When all is said and done, critics argue, Walz won't be remembered as a governor who guided Minnesota through tough times. Instead, thanks to those public takedowns, he'll be remembered as the guy who showed up to his own roast and still got roasted.